This is the last in the outcome mapping video series, and for those of you that have journeyed with me all the way through the videos, you will be expecting in this video for it to be about the details of the monitoring and evaluation. In the original IDRC model, they have a little section called outcome journal, performance journal, etc. And having spent a lot of time planning what data we are going to gather, you would expect quite some detail on how we gather that data and how we analyze that data. But actually, I think this is where many of my training sessions with people go wrong. At this point, they're very disappointed because there's not a lot of detail. There's a set of boxes, and we're reduced back down to filling in boxes according to the information that we require. And that to many people is very disappointing because they think of outcome mapping as a new monitoring and evaluation tool alongside most significant change, alongside standard statistical techniques with household surveys, etc. So they think that outcome mapping is primarily a monitoring and evaluation tool. I hope at the beginning of this series I communicated clearly enough that actually outcome mapping is a different way of thinking about your program. It's about thinking at it from a different angle to some of the more conventional techniques of log frames and theory of change, and focusing that theory of change on outputs and activities. The outcome mapping is all about focusing the change, what change is happening in the people. Therefore, when we come to monitoring and evaluation, it's actually a no-brainer. It's very easy to understand what monitoring and evaluation we need because we have spent so much time in the planning. Is it possible to retrofit monitoring and evaluation to a program that didn't plan with outcome mapping but actually planned through conventional activities and outputs? I think there is some possibility, some elements of being able to retrofit it, because you can still go through that planning process and say which were our boundary partners and what was the change that we expected. So you can do the whole planning but with hindsight. Instead of saying what change do we expect in our boundary partners, we can actually say what behavioural change did we expect, and then we can go out and gather that data. Now, if you follow the IDRC toolkit manual and actually put in place all the different tables and pieces of paper that you're supposed to have for monitoring and evaluation, it is quite a burden on your team. It's a very, there is a lot of data to be gathered. But actually a lot of that data can be reduced almost to tick boxes. If you're saying that you're looking at a boundary partner and you're saying that you expect them to go along this path, you'd like them to move to this bit in the landscape, you'd love them to get to the top of the mountain, then actually all you need to do is to put those things down and say whether that boundary partner is moving along a path towards expect, along a path towards like, or is actually reaching the love expectation. So, to give an example, in Cambodia, when we were dealing with community development, and basically the whole process within the community development was to ask questions and allow the communities to explore their own problems and come up with their own solutions. And the behaviour change we were looking for was that they would actually analyse problems and find solutions. We didn't necessarily need to document all our different solutions. However, for the donors' sake, they needed to know that actually people were getting more food, children's health was improving, education was improving. So we had a set of boxes that said people have discussed, and we just put it down as discussed, prepared action, taken action, and completed. And we would say schools, and then you'd have a whole bunch of sub things that came up gradually, you know, new building, supply of teachers, getting girls into school, getting the most poor and vulnerable into school. And you could just put a tick. Yes, that's been discussed. Yes, that they have prepared to take action on that. Yes, they've taken action, and yes, they've completed it. And just put a date. Because when you put the date, as it moves across the page, you can see the journey. And you can see whether a community is discussing solely education, or this section down here might be for health, and this section down here might be for livelihoods. Are they fixated on livelihoods? We have said in our outcome mapping that our boundary partners of a community village development committee, we expect them to discuss the problems of the village. We would like them to take action on those problems, and we would love them to even start initiating discussions on problems and finding solutions. All of that can be captured in a very boxy chart which takes into account dates. Now, of course, then there's the qualitative discussion to find out how that journey felt for those people, and to find some of the nuances of that journey, that they began to discuss it and then they collapsed. The discussion collapsed because, I don't know, the chief wasn't playing ball, and so you then came back to it several months later. But that's on your chart. You can see that it is moving. You know, first discussion was in June, next discussion was in December. Why the gap? You can ask the question. So when people start discussing outcome mapping, they think that it's going to present them often. They think that it's going to present them with a new set of monitoring and evaluation tools, but it doesn't. What changes is what narrative, what story you're expecting within your gathering of data. You're not expecting to just tick, yeah, new school built, tick, new health clinic built, tick. No, you want to know the behavioural change of the boundary partners. So school governors discussed, actioned, completed. It allows a flexibility in the program because you're looking at groups of people and you're asking questions in your monitoring and evaluation exercises about the groups of people. I don't want to say any more about the monitoring and evaluation. I don't want to go through the IDRC tools because they ask clear questions and they present a box, and people are expected to fill them in every week, every day, every month, and to build up a body of knowledge throughout the program. But we know that in most cases programs get so busy that day-to-day monitoring is a problem. Outcome mapping will not solve that for you. The discipline of gathering data as you go along and keeping records is a discipline that, yes, some people have and some people don't. And often it can become law, and it can end up that people are keeping the records more than they're doing their job. The challenge of ongoing monitoring and evaluation is not going to be solved by outcome mapping. But what is a strong contribution of outcome mapping to the monitoring and evaluation field is this shift away from trying to monitor activities and outputs to monitor the behavioural change in boundary actors. What we've already talked about, stakeholders, is an interchangeable term to some extent. That's probably going to be very disappointing to those of you that clicked onto the video, because some of you will have clicked onto it thinking that outcome mapping is going to give you new approaches to monitoring and evaluation. It does give you new core approaches, new principles, but it doesn't give you new tools per se. You can't get away from gathering qualitative data by having discussion with people. And then personally, I like quantitative data in that even with statements you can say, yeah, so one set of boundary actors among, say, the village development committees may have had the comment that said, yes, this program has really helped us, but you can test that like a market survey across the wider community and see whether you've been working with an elite or whether it has included everybody. So I said that this was the last in the series. There are things that come up on the outcome mapping discussion site, and that's well worth a constant visit, and maybe sign up on the email discussion, because people are all the time wrestling with outcome mapping. They're making adaptations, they're trying to take it forward in various different ways. So do join in that discussion. And if there are some extra things or I get feedback on the video, I may make some more videos just to fill in some of the gaps. Thank you very much.